All right, we're back for one more thing. Has the Heat front office lost the pulse of the fan base? We'll talk about that next.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making us your first listen every day. Join the Cookie Gang, become an everydayer. That means subscribing, tuning in every day, Monday through Friday, and signing up for the Everydayer Club with the link in the show notes. I'm Wes Goldberg, host of Locked On NBA Daily and Real GM Radio. I'm here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. We just got done recording our post-game reaction to the Heat's walloping win over the Washington Wizards. We talked about Eric Spoelstra's revealing comments about what the Heat think about tanking in that first segment of that show, plus credit cookies, and got to your listener questions, including our analysis of the Bam, Adebayo, and Kel'el wear minutes. If you missed that, it's up in your YouTube feed and your podcast feed. We got a few more listener questions, though, to get to, and this one comes from Lander, who writes in, has the Heat front office lost the pulse of the fan base with no superstars on the horizon now that Giannis becomes more difficult to trade for in the summer? Is it finally time for hard conversations? David, we started talking about this again in the first segment of the post-game show there, but the idea that the Heat front office has lost the pulse of the fan base, though, that to me is a little interesting. What do you think?
I think it's a question that fans have. I don't think it's a question that franchises have. I think franchises move forward, as Eric Spoelstra's quote indicated in the quote that you read out loud in the previous episode, that they have their approach, and it doesn't matter what any of us as media members, as fans, or even as other franchises have to say about what the Heat do. They've got their plan. They've got their way of doing things, and that's not going to change. So I don't know that they move forward and have ever moved forward with the idea of, well, let's get in touch or let's feel the pulse of the fan base. They're going to put out the best team they can. They're going to try to compete. They're going to try to put out an entertaining product, and they're going to try to win a lot of games. Again, to the point that a lot of fans want this team to tank. As a fan, I don't think tanking is something you want to see. Like, look to all the teams that have tanked over the past, I don't even know how large sample size you want to go to. Those stands are empty. Nobody likes the tanking approach because your team doesn't win a lot of games until you win out, until you get lucky and get Cooper Flag or that next generational type player. But the chances of that happening aren't great. Look, I used to cover games in Orlando when they had tanked for a number of seasons, and all they had to show for it was Victor Oladipo and Aaron Gordon. And you know what? Those stands were half empty a lot of the times. And even when the Miami Heat were in town, all you heard was "Let's go Heat" chants. Did they eventually get lucky with a Paolo Banchero? Sure. And what has that netted them? Like, what have they been able to accomplish as a result? They're, as you pointed out before, they're in like their third rebuild over the last 15 years since Dwight left the Orlando Magic. And they haven't really accomplished anything. They haven't been able to go to a finals. They haven't been able to go to a deep playoff run. They've been okay. They're getting better, and they're a good team. And I like the Orlando Magic just fine. But tanking doesn't necessarily work. And so you don't follow what fans want, because fans, being short for fanatical, means that you're going to be fickle. Oh, I don't like this guy. I want to trade this guy, or I want to blow this up. Well, that's not how teams operate. So it's an interesting question. I think that it's never been a concern. That's how I would answer it, is that they're not interested in what the pulse of the fan has to be, because they're trying to put together a team that wins, a team that competes, and a team that's going to be positioning themselves to maybe get better down the road. But blowing it up isn't going to help. If that's what the pulse of the fan is like, saying, oh, let's blow up this team, or let's acquire that draft pick or anything like that, then that's not necessarily something that the Heat front office is interested in.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I mean, there is a segment of Heat fans that do believe that it should be blown up and that this team should take a calculated step back and maybe play for a lottery pick in a loaded draft. There's also a lot of Heat fans that don't want that. There are a lot of Heat fans who might be even maybe on the more casual side, and I'm not judging, But there's a lot of Heat fans that say, I like that when I go to a Heat game, there's a team out there that is trying to win that game, right? And so if you're just tuning in on a random night, and maybe you're not tuning into every Heat game, maybe you're not necessarily watching this show because you're not a diehard Heat fan, you just want to turn on a game every once in a while and trust that the team on the screen is competing to try to win that game. And there's a big part of the fan base that appreciates that. The Heat have sold out, by the way, their season tickets for whatever, like 17 straight years or something.
Mm-hmm.
The fan base, the pulse of the fan base isn't telling you that you're doing something wrong. The fan base is telling you everything you're doing so far is working because we keep selling out our season tickets and we keep selling out all these home games. Right now, the Heat always rank near the top of the league in terms of merchandise sales, right? Like, there's a very online segment of the fan base that wants to tank it. I'm not saying that fan base is wrong. I just think that those fans tend to basically exist and operate and talk about things online, whereas there's a lot of other Heat fans that don't really think that that's the way to go. The Heat, and no front office, Miami's front office or any front office should ever do anything based on the pulse of the fan base. Because number one, you could get that pulse wrong. You could read the pulse incorrectly. Okay? So that's one reason not to do it. But the big reason not to do it is because the fans don't have your job. You have your job. And I think one of the hard parts of a front office is to eliminate the emotion of it and be as forward-looking and as big picture looking as possible, even if things are as frustrating as they are in the moment, right? And so if the Heat's front office is saying, look, we understand it's frustrating, but we don't think that taking that step back right now before the trade deadline is the right way to go. They have another idea of what it is that they're going to try to do. Giannis, by the way, is still the plan over the summer. And I would propose this. As frustrating as things are right now, if the Heat were to land Giannis in the summer, isn't all forgiven? Don't you just forget about these couple of months where it was frustrating that the Heat didn't make a move at the trade deadline? Of course you do. And I think that's right now what the Heat are betting on, at the very least. Would the Heat ever consider trading Bam Adebayo? We'll talk about that next. Today's episode of Locked On Heat is brought to you by PrizePicks. Shoot your shot on PrizePicks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. PrizePicks is giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks makes every dunk, every dime, and every board that much more exciting. It's America's #1 app for sports picks. PrizePicks is simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and if your picks are right, you can cash in. You can choose from basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, UFC, and more. Plus, they got features like early payouts and flex play, so you've got options while the games are still happening. I downloaded the app. I was surprised by how easy it was to get started. It took just a couple minutes to build my very first lineup. I've been making NBA lineups around players that I already follow, picking more or less on points and assists, and honestly, it makes every possession way more fun to watch. I also love the social feature where you can see what other people are playing and copy lineups with one click. It's a cool way to learn and build better picks. And it's available in all 50 states, so it's easy for just about anybody to jump in. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Sam writes in what world would the front office trade Bam Adebayo? Feels like every other front office in our position would make a youth movement and trade the vets who don't make sense with the timeline of the young guys and get more picks. I get Bam as the standard bearer, but I feel like not considering trading him would be unwise. David, we just saw the Memphis Grizzlies trade their version of Bam Adebayo, I guess, and Jaren Jackson Jr. to the Jazz for 3 okay first-round picks and a smorgasbord of young players. We have heard it time and time again now, David. The Heat will not trade Bam Adebayo, and even in the Giannis talks, everybody was on the table except for Bam Adebayo. He is untouchable.
Yeah, I don't think that they would ever willingly trade Bam Adebayo. I think they just appreciate too much what he brings off the court, on the court, and everything in between. And I don't, short of him requesting a trade, and I think that's a concern and should be a concern because I don't think it's anything immediate. I don't think Bam is looking at this front office and their failure to land Giannis and saying, okay, that was the final straw I want off this team, because he has had 2 runs to the finals. And just, I think he's obviously interested in getting a championship. I think that's his goal. And he wants to win here in Miami. So I don't think he's interested in a trade anytime soon, but I would say it's much more realistic a concern than it was maybe a couple of years ago. And I think that's the only way that they'll consider trading him. As far as like trading him to appease this idea of getting younger, again, that's a greater step back than the front office needs to take. You've got a solid player, maybe not one that you can necessarily build around, but that you certainly want on the roster. And Bam meets that criteria. He's a very, very, very good player that does a lot of things that help a team win. You want that guy. You need that guy on your roster. Now, do you need somebody else? Absolutely. But winning with Bam has been and should be enough. And because the front office recognizes that, I don't see any reason why they would consider trading him. Short of what trade? Like, it would have to be for if Jokic specifically says, trade me to the Heat, and that's the only way it gets done. Yes, that's right. The only way it'll happen. Otherwise, I can't see any scenario in which they would trade Bam Adebayo.
Yeah, you're not trading Bam and upgrading, right? Like you're not trading Bam for an upgrade. Those trades aren't out there. Those trades don't happen. And then unless you're trading Anthony Davis for Luka Doncic because Nico Harrison is in charge of an organization. That's really the only time that happens, right?
Right.
To your point, Bam looks at himself as a combination of Udonis Haslem and Dwayne Wade. He does not want to play for another organization. If it's up to him, he'll go out swinging with the Miami Heat. I agree with you. Maybe when his this latest extension goes to the 2028-2029 season, that's a player option here. When we get closer to that, maybe Bam. Who knows? I'm not reporting anything. You just, to your point, if it's still just like play-in tournament, maybe Bam does start to look around. And I do think that the Heat should be cognizant of that, right? That said, the idea is to pair Bam with a number one option. Because as soon as you get that number one option, you're going to wish you had a number two option like Bam, who doesn't necessarily need the ball to make a huge impact, who is a backbone of your defense, who does a lot of the things complementary of a superstar player. It's just that right now, Bam isn't that superstar player. Now, we'll see what happens, right? Like if you get Giannis, if you get Donovan Mitchell, if you get one of these kinds of players over the summer, those are the kind of players who pair well with Bam Adebayo. But if you don't get one of those guys, then I do think you need to have a conversation about what are we doing as an organization? How do we take that step forward? If the goal is to win championships, how do we get closer to that? Because we're so far away from that right now. But right now, no. Bam is he's off the table because the idea, again, Bam is the culture setter, all these things that is important to this organization. But I do think that they look at a team in the future that has a number one option and Bam as the kind of team that can win a championship. Because I say this all the time. When you trade for if you're trying to trade for Giannis or Kevin Durant or Donovan Mitchell or Damian Lillard or whatever it is, the goal isn't to get that guy. The goal is to win a championship with that guy. And you think that getting that guy gets you closer to a championship. But that guy alone doesn't win you the championship. You need guys like Bam next to those guys. So if you trade Bam, you're gonna wish you had Bam if you eventually do get that guy. And you're not really you're not trading Bam for that guy. Those trades aren't out there. Those trades don't happen.
Yeah, that would kind of signify the full embracing of a tank, right? Like the final admission, oh, we're just never gonna get it done. Yeah, like trading Bam Adebayo. If they finally just said, you know what, we're like Bam raises the floor too much. Maybe he doesn't raise his ceiling, but he raises the floor too much. You're going to just keep winning. You're going to be a play-in team, but you're going to win a minimum number of games every year because that's how good he is. So if you just say, you know what, we want to win less, even
trading Bam would be the
right
tank.
Now, that would be the move.
You trade Bam, and that would be tank. You would be announcing to the league. If they traded Bam, you'd be announcing to the league, everybody else on the roster is gettable. We are tanking. Like that would be the move. It's what Memphis just did, right? With Jaren Jackson Jr. Right. They signaled to the rest of the league, we're starting over. That'll do it for us today. Thanks for tuning in to One More Thing. Thanks for tuning in to Locked On Heat. Make sure you subscribe, follow Locked On Heat so you get all the latest episodes. We'll be back tonight with our post-game reactions to Heat Jazz. We'll talk to you soon.